today we were covering the church is Catholic. So I guess to start with, where does that come from? And then we'll move from there into what does Catholic mean? So where does it come from?
The etymology of the word Catholic comes from two Greek words, kata holos, which means according to the whole. Mm-hmm. So according to the whole, which is often translated universal. So Catholic equals universal. So one holy universal apostolic church is what we can mean when we say Catholic.
Okay.
And the term comes from, we see it first used by Saint Ignatius of Antioch.
Yeah.
So Saint Ignatius of Antioch, dies in about 107, 110 AD, and he writes a series of 7 letters to these different churches as he's leaving his home church in Antioch, and he's heading to Rome to be killed in the circus. He'll be eaten by 2 lions. And so he's a bishop, he's a martyr, and he writes these letters. And one of the letters he writes is to the church of Smyrna. In the church of Smyrna, he says, here's a quote, "Wherever the bishop shall appear, there let the people also be. Even as where Jesus Christ is, there is the Catholic Church." So it's kind of a famous quotation you may have heard before is, where the bishop is, that's where you're going to find the church. Yep. Where Jesus is, that's where you're going to find the Catholic Church. So this is beautiful to link it to what we've talked about before is these marks come from being united to Christ as head of the church. These are gifts that Jesus gives to his church.
Yeah. And so obviously this word Catholic, universal gets taken up into the creed. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say like this is for your Catholic cocktail parties when you have to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Catholic edition So the very first place that the word Catholic is used is Antioch.
Yeah, very early.
What is Antioch also known for? The first time that certain
Christians
is
the first title. Yeah, the first time they're called Christians.
In the book of Acts 17.
From the Acts.
Is it interesting? So I always find it interesting that Antioch is good at naming things, I guess.
Interesting, yes.
So Antioch is where they're first called Christians.
Yeah.
Antioch is where they're first called Catholics. Antioch is the very first bishop of Antioch. Do you know?
Ooh.
St. Peter.
Oh.
Peter goes to Antioch and founds the church in Antioch.
That is some high-level biblical trivia.
So biblical trivia for you.
That is pretty good. So when St. Ignatius says that where Jesus Christ is, there is the Catholic Church, can you just unpack that a little bit for us? What does he mean by that?
Yeah. So this is where we get to the heart of what do we mean by Catholic in this mark of the church. And it means... Catholic means 2 things as when we refer to it. First and foremost, it means kind of an internal understanding of what's Catholic, a wholeness and holiness. It has the fullness of the means of holiness to get to heaven. We can unpack that. And secondly, more of an external looking direction is it has a universality. It's for all people of all times. That there's, when we're kind of most familiar with the Great Commission of Jesus Christ in Matthew chapter 28, where he says, "Go therefore make disciples of all nations, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. I'll be with you always." So Jesus doesn't say, hey, go and spread the gospel for the first 1,000 years and then chill.
Yeah.
But it's always do this. I'm always going to be with you. And it's like, hey, go to these 3 continents, but not the other continents. He really does say everywhere, which is, so we can start with this mark, but this part of the mark. But the idea is that this gospel is good news for everyone, that no one should be excluded. And this is a right, in a sense, that everyone has a right to hear the gospel. And sometimes the only way that they're actually going to hear the gospel is because we go. That we're sent to go to share that gospel with them.
Yeah, and I feel like when we're talking about Catholic or universal, really in this kind of geographic sense, it touches on something that is at the heart of the gospel, which is that it is meant for everyone. It is not limited to a geographic space or a country or a type of people, but that the gospel is something that brings freedom and joy, which is, as you said, a right for all.
Well, I think about the gospel, because it's true, and of God and for us, made in the image and likeness of God, that it can go to any culture and transform that culture. This is what we, a true understanding of what we might call enculturation.
Yes.
Of it goes to the culture and removes anything. The Christian faith should remove anything that is contrary to the gospel, to the good news, but can, in a sense, Christianize, or sometimes we'll say baptize, in the sense of take something pagan and make it Christian, if it leads to the glory of God. Yeah.
So 2 things. First, I want to just, for those of you who are following along, in the Catechism, this, what does the word Catholic mean, or the Church is Catholic, is covered in paragraphs 830 through 856. But I do want to talk a little bit more about this idea of the church as being universal, because I think that especially around some of the way that the ideas are going around today, there is this kind of worry that, oh, well, that is an imposing of a value system or a culture onto a civilization that might take something away, which is just not at all what is meant by it, first of all, nor is it how it has actually been lived. And two of the people that I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on their name. St. John Paul II held them up as kind of models for the new evangelization. They're like 8th century.
Cyril and Methodius?
Cyril and Methodius. How they went into, was it the Slavic people? They learned their alphabet. They translated.
They made the alphabet.
They
learned the
alphabet,
language
that's right.
and they made the Cyrillic alphabet.
And then they translated the Gospels, and then they went, but they lived with them for many years. And then they kind of brought about, as you said, inculturation. They took the elements of the Gospel and brought it in. So that's something very beautiful, I think, about the Gospel, and that it should never hinder us from taking it to people or places or cultures. It's never something that destroys culture. It purifies it, it perfects it, it elevates it, and it leads to authentic human freedom. And you can see that in the universality of the church, where it's gone out to Africa, it's gone to China, it's gone to the Middle East, it's gone to South America, it's gone to the United States, it's gone to Canada, as far off as Canada. And, it has always elevated culture, both in like spiritual, but also material ways in terms of art and music and expression. And it's really beautiful. So that's a little bit.
Yeah, I would say like this is not just something when we talk about this, and then we'll talk about this with the apostolic as well, but this is something that everyone's called to do. Like that it's not just a mission for a certain group of people, missionaries, but we're actually by our baptism, was kind of a prelude for what we'll talk about next time, but that by our very baptism and confirmation, we are all called to participate in this mission.
Yeah, which is awesome. So that kind of talks about Catholic in terms of, I guess, more of the geographic sense, that the gospel is meant to spread to the ends of the earth. That's what the early apostles are doing. Paul thought he took it to the ends of the earth when he got to the west coast of Spain. And it's meant to go everywhere. So, but earlier you had brought up a more internal Catholicity or universality, which is a kind of fullness for salvation. Do you want to just walk us through a little bit more there?
Sure. So internal to the church, so a wholeness, if you will. So this, WHOLE, that there's a wholeness of the means of sanctification, because the church is united to Christ, who is that source of all the truth and the holiness. So each local church, and by a local church we mean a bishop that is in union with Rome, has everything necessary for salvation in it.